The world remembers the Vikings as wolves of the north, warriors who carved kingdoms from the bones of Europe. They burned cities, enslaved empires, and wrote sagas in blood and fire. Yet even the fiercest Viking warlord whispered of people they dared not cross. There were tribes so ruthless, so cunning, that even Odin's sons spoke of them with dread. This is not a tale of Viking conquest, it is a tale of Viking fear. These tribes didn't build ships or raid villages for gold. They hunted raiders. They fought not for wealth, but for survival, vengeance, and the spirits of their ancestors. In the frozen wilderness where light itself seemed afraid to shine, these tribes waited for their prey. The Northmen had gods, but these tribes had demons. Today we sail into the dark heart of the Viking Age to uncover the people who made even the fiercest Norse warriors tremble. From the shadowy forests of the Baltic to the endless ice of the Arctic Circle, these were the tribes the Vikings feared more than anyone else. Long before the Viking longships struck England or France, the Norse whispered about the spirits of the north. These were not spirits at all. They were the Sami tribes, reindeer herders and hunters who lived where no Viking dared to stay for long. The Sami knew the snow like the back of their hand. They could vanish into storms and reappear behind their enemies' backs. Vikings were warriors of steel and sea, but the Sami were warriors of silence. They used poison from nature, arrows tipped with deadly sap that killed even the strongest Viking in hours. The Norse feared their noidi, or shamans, who could summon winds and curse ships. To the Vikings, fighting the Sami was not war, it was tempting fate. Every winter, stories spread through the longhouses of Viking patrols disappearing in the tundra, of camps found abandoned with only frozen footprints leading into darkness. Even the bravest berserkers refused to chase the Sami into their lands. It was said that the snow itself betrayed the uninvited, swallowing them whole. Beyond Sweden's frozen lakes lay another enemy, the Finnic tribes. They were not kings or conquerors, but deadly guerrilla hunters. The Vikings called them the people who vanish. They lived in deep forests where sunlight barely touched the ground, and they struck with unmatched precision. Unlike the Norse, the Finnic warriors did not fight in open fields. They ambushed Viking warbands using traps, pits, and poisoned darts. Vikings, accustomed to glorious combat, found themselves hunted like animals. For the first time, the predators became the prey. Even Viking traders traveling the eastern rivers toward the Russ lands feared passing through Finnic territory. The forests whispered with unseen watchers. Arrows came from nowhere. Entire expeditions vanished without trace, and the survivors told tales of forest spirits wearing the faces of men. The Curonians, a fierce Baltic tribe, were the sea's own defenders. Unlike most tribes, they challenged the Vikings at their own game, naval warfare. The Curonians built fast ships, small but deadly, that could outmaneuver Viking longships on narrow coastal waters. When Viking raiders attacked Curonian villages, they met a resistance unlike any other. The Curonians counter-raided, ambushing the Norse fleets as they returned home with stolen goods. Viking sagas describe how the Curonians fought like wolves cornered in flame, refusing to surrender even when outnumbered. Over time, the Vikings learned that raiding Curonian shores brought more death than silver. The Curonians' revenge was ruthless. They captured Viking ships, sacrificed their crews to their sea gods, and left their bones to bleach on the coast. When the Vikings sailed down the rivers of modern-day Russia, they met the Slavic tribes, fierce warriors who fought with cunning and faith. These were not primitive people, but organized defenders of their lands, bound by loyalty and ancient rituals. The Vikings underestimated them. But in dense forests and swampy plains, the Slavs turned nature into a weapon. They cut off Viking supply routes, poisoned wells, and burned the land before retreating. When the Norse called for open battle, the Slavs vanished, only to reappear when darkness fell. The sagas mention how Viking jarls cursed the eastern campaigns. They said no man could fight both men and the land itself. The Slavs didn't fight for plunder. They fought for survival, and they never forgave an invader. Not all enemies of the Vikings lived in the east. Across the North Sea, the Picts of Scotland stood as a living nightmare for Norse invaders. These painted warriors fought with ferocity unmatched by any tribe the Vikings had ever seen. They used deception, hiding in fog and attacking at dawn. Viking ships that landed on Scottish shores often found their camps surrounded within hours. Pictish warriors struck fast, vanished into the mist, and returned when the Norse least expected it. The Vikings called the Scottish Highlands the land of ghosts, for no invader could hold it. Even when they conquered, they could not keep what they took. The land itself rebelled against them, wild, untamed, and unforgiving. The Irish clans were among the few who fought the Vikings not just with swords, but with unity. Kings like Brian Boru led the Gaelic tribes to strike back against the Norse invaders who had burned their cities and enslaved their people. Irish warriors used ambushes and hit-and-run tactics to bleed Viking settlements dry. They struck when the Norse least expected it, during festivals, storms, or funerals. Every raid the Vikings launched came with the risk of brutal retaliation. In the end, it was the Irish who broke Viking control in their lands. The Battle of Clontarf became a symbol, proof that even the Northmen could be defeated when met with unyielding courage. Far above the Arctic Circle, the Nenets and Chuds were names spoken in whispers. To the Vikings, they were almost mythical, tribes that lived where no sane man could survive. They hunted in eternal snow and worshipped spirits that made even Odin seem distant. When Viking explorers tried to reach those lands, they vanished. Stories told of northern spirits freezing entire expeditions in a single night. Whether these were myths or truths didn't matter, fear was enough. The northern tribes became legends of terror and awe. For the Vikings, conquest had limits. The icy north was not theirs to take. It belonged to the people who had mastered it for centuries, untouched by greed, protected by the cold itself. In the Baltic region, the Prussians and Lithuanians stood firm against Viking raids. They were skilled archers, their forests dense and filled with traps. The Norse called them forest demons because they seemed to strike from nowhere. Viking attempts to colonize their coastlines met fierce resistance. Every longhouse burned by the Norse was avenged tenfold. These tribes fought as one family, united by faith and survival. Even centuries later, the Norse still warned their sons, never raid the forests of the south. Those who did rarely returned, and those who did were never the same again. Before uniting under kings, the Saxons of northern Europe were fierce tribal warriors. When the Vikings tried to raid them, they met their equals. The Saxon shield walls were impenetrable, their resolve unbreakable. The Norse expected easy victories, but found themselves trapped in endless wars. The Saxons fought for their homes, and every village was a fortress. The Vikings had to respect them or perish. Even after conquering parts of England, the Vikings never truly subdued the Saxon spirit. It was their rebellion that eventually shattered Norse dominance in the British Isles. The Franks, ancestors of modern France, were perhaps the first great empire the Vikings truly feared. Under kings like Charlemagne, they commanded armies with discipline and iron. Their castles rose like mountains, unbreakable even to the fiercest raiders. When Viking fleets attacked Frankish towns, they met organized resistance and deadly traps. The Franks had learned the Norse ways and used them against them. No longer victims, they became executioners. Over time, Viking leaders turned to peace treaties and trade instead of war. Even the fiercest berserkers knew. Raiding Frankish lands meant inviting death. In the far east of the Viking world lived the Khazars, a powerful confederation of warriors and traders. Their cities along the Caspian Sea were heavily fortified, guarded by horse archers who could strike with deadly speed. When Viking explorers tried to seize Khazar trade routes, they found themselves surrounded. The Khazars used steppe tactics, fast, precise, and merciless. The Norse had never faced such mobility before. They realized they were not the masters of the world, merely wanderers in someone else's domain. The Khazars proved that fear could come not from barbarism, but from brilliance and order. In Central Europe, the Bohemian tribes fought the Vikings and their allies with fury born of faith. They ambushed Norse merchants on rivers, burned their camps, and offered no mercy to raiders. The Vikings learned to avoid Bohemian lands entirely. Even the Rus, Norse settlers of the East, respected their power. The Bohemians were not rich, but their unity made them unstoppable. To the Vikings, they were a wall of men and stone, a place where northern blades went dull and northern pride met its end. Among the Sami and Baltic tribes were rumors of female warriors who fought with unmatched ferocity. Viking accounts speak of women who stood shoulder to shoulder with men, wielding spears and axes under the northern lights. To a Viking, this was terrifying, not because of the violence, but because it defied their belief in male dominance. A people who could produce warriors from both genders seemed blessed or cursed by gods stronger than their own. These warrior women became part of Norse legend. They were said to call upon the spirits of the snow, turning battlefields into frozen graves. As centuries passed, the Viking Age began to fade. Their enemies grew smarter, stronger, and more united. The very tribes they once dismissed as savages now rose to defend Europe from them. Trade replaced raiding. Fortresses replaced villages. The Norse gods grew silent, replaced by the cross of Christ. The tribes they once feared became nations, and history turned its gaze elsewhere. But the memories remained, whispers of snow spirits, cursed forests, and arrows that struck from the dark. The Vikings had conquered the seas, but not their fears. Even today, legends of those tribes linger in the old sagas. The Sami, the Curonians, the Slavs, and countless others prove that fear is a weapon more powerful than any sword. They did not conquer kingdoms, they conquered the hearts of those who thought themselves gods. The Vikings' greatness was real, but so was their fear. The tribes they fought taught them humility, endurance, and respect for forces beyond steel. Every scar on a Viking shield tells not just of victory, but of survival. And so, in the end, the story of Viking fear is not one of weakness. It is a testament to the resilience of those who refused to bow. The tribes who fought the Northmen proved that courage does not always wear a crown. Sometimes it hides in the snow. The sagas speak of glory, conquest, and gods who walked with men. But hidden between those lines are stories of fear, the kind that even the bravest warriors could not escape. The Vikings feared no kings, no armies, and no empires. But they feared these tribes. They feared the unknown, the shadows in the forest, the whisper of the wind, the power of people who fought not for fame, but for home. And that fear, more than any battle, defined their legacy. Because even legends must remember, the fiercest warriors always meet their match.